Okay, so we've started recording. So this is week number 2 of your introduction to AutoCAD. Okay. In general, I don't know why I had problems today, but usually there's a demonstration file and then there's a handout that goes with the file. So today, along with your demonstration file, okay, if you open it up, it should be week_2_UCS. Okay. Should have something that looks like so. The other file that you should have is your course outline. Not your course outline, sorry, the outline for week number 2, which is called Cartesian Coordinate System Input Methods. Okay, you need both of those files. What we'll be reviewing today is we're going to look at how AutoCAD is based on the Cartesian coordinate system. We're going to be using some simple commands, and we're going to look at how we can use these various input methods to control what AutoCAD is creating. And in order to practice this, once we've reviewed these items, you have an assignment at the end. So it's week number 2, lab assignment number 2, even though we didn't technically do one last week. Okay. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. Okay. We can review them in lab time if you're unsure of any of them. Okay, but each one of these questions is reliant on you following the instructions, and all of the instructions are based on the information on the first page. Okay, so let's take a look at our Cartesian coordinate system and how that works for us. And I can't open my chat right now because I'm not sure why. So if there's any questions that need to be flagged to me, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, I will just keep talking unless Tony tells me to stop. Okay, so with your file open, so bizarre. I don't know why the chat doesn't open or close. You know, you should see a red cross, and we have a couple of different quadrants around it. Now, in order to navigate the space, okay, we're going to use this space to practice drawing with the line tool. But before we can even start doing that, there's a couple of things that we need to learn to help us out. So a few of those items have to do with your mouse. So when you move your mouse in the model space, the cursor, right, the crosshair with the pick box in the middle, the little square in the middle, it will move accordingly, right? So if I push to the right, the cursor moves to the right. If I push to the left, it moves to the left. If you left click in space, okay, you can hover over top of objects and you can select them. Okay. If you want to deselect an item, you can hold down Shift and AutoCAD will do the opposite. So we can select objects and we can deselect objects. If for some reason you can't remember how to deselect using the Shift key, or you're in the middle of a command and it's not quite working the way that you expect it to, the one key on your keyboard that can kind of rescue you from that situation is the Escape key. So when you hit Escape, it cancels everything. And you can see down in your command line that Escape key is causing AutoCAD to cancel everything. Okay? So if you get lost in space or things aren't working out the way that you intend them to, you can always hit Escape and it will cancel everything. Okay? If there's a little bit of line work that we need to clean up, we'll look at that a little bit later and some commands that can help us with that. Okay. The right mouse button pulls up menus, and it is context sensitive. So when I have nothing selected, if I right click, it pulls up a menu which allows me to operate the model space and pull up a couple of different other features that I may want. Okay. Sorry, yeah, I hit escape to stop. And if you get a box like so by clicking in space, right? If you click on top of an object, it will select it. If you click in space, you get these green and blue boxes. Same thing as before, escape, right? The escape key will help us from that. If you do have something selected and you right click, you will get a menu that has options for that object. Okay, so the right click pulls up options for us. So hit the escape key again. The other button that you have on your mouse, right? So we have a left click, which we use to select things. We have a right click, which we use for our menus, our options. And then the last click that we have is actually the mouse wheel. So if you click the mouse wheel, you will see a hand blip up on the screen. If you hold the wheel down, the hand will stay. Okay. So that hand, if you hold the wheel down, you can use that hand to push your model space around. This is called panning. So we're panning from one point to another. So this is nice because when we're drafting, when we're working on our document, we can use pan to navigate around. Okay. And then the last function that you will make a lot of use of today on your mouse is the pushing the wheel away from you and towards you. So if you roll it away from you, you will zoom in. And if you roll it towards you, you will zoom out. Okay. So we can zoom in and zoom out. And where you put your crosshair, right, that is where AutoCAD will zoom. So if I move to the 0, we can zoom in and out on the 0. If I go to the 270 degrees, we can zoom in and out on the 270. Okay, and so one more thing. So when we're zooming in and out, there's a chance that accidentally you may zoom out very far. We may lose sight of what's happening. There's also a chance, see if I can find it again. There's also a chance that you can zoom in very close and you will still not be able to find anything when you pan around. In this case, okay, if you get lost in space, escape will not help you because that cancels commands. But what you need to do is something called zooming to the extents. So the extents of your drawing are the furthest reaches of the line work or the objects in that drawing. And the way that we do that is you have to double click the mouse wheel. Okay, so you can hit escape, make sure that we're not doing anything. And then if I double click the wheel, AutoCAD will zoom to show me the extents of this drawing. And then we can start working again. Okay, so we'll be zooming in and out. We'll be panning around from one quadrant to the other. And if we get lost in space, we're not sure what's happening, we can hit escape to cancel everything. And then we can double click to zoom extents. And then we can navigate back to where we need to be again. Okay, so that's our mouse. Okay. The other tool that you will need in order to go through this exercise, well, we're just going to practice, right? This is just for practice. And sometimes it'll work the first try and sometimes it doesn't. That's the way, you know, new things are in life. The command that we're going to use to practice controlling our shapes is called the line command. Okay. This line creates straight segments from one point to another. And we're going to specify those points in space. So when you look at your Cartesian coordinate system, okay, it's broken up into 4 different quadrants. If you look at your handout for today, on the very last page, okay, you have an image which shows how those quadrants work and how our positive rotation functions. So the way that the quadrants are marked out is that we have an X and we have a Y axis. The X axis pointing to the east is our 0 point. So this is 0 degrees. And then the angles rotate counterclockwise in a positive manner. So straight up will be 90. To the left, negative X will be 180 degrees. Straight down, negative Y will be 270 degrees. And then it goes all the way back around to 360. So on this coordinate system, 0 and 360 are equivalent to each other. So if you were to type in either one of those options to control your angle, AutoCAD would treat them the same. So back in our CAD file, we're going to practice a couple of different methods for the input. Those methods refer to the first page of your handout. They are the absolute coordinate method, the relative coordinate method, polar coordinates method, and direct input. The 5th one that we have here is called dynamic input. It was introduced a few years ago. I do not use it, and I am not a fan of it, but I will show you today a little bit of what it does and how it works, okay? I'm not against it, I just don't know it well enough to teach it. And I don't really know anyone who does use it, to be honest. I do know that sometimes in AutoCAD, it's turned on by default because they like to try to push the new features. So I'll show you today how to recognize whether it's turned on or not, and how to turn it off. Because if dynamic input is active, the rest of these methods that we're going to practice, they won't work the way that you expect them to. Oh, there's my chat. My chat just opened up. Let's see, are we doing okay? Okay, yeah. So if you look back at your course outline, you can see when these assignments are due. So if you're unsure of how that works, I can review that with you in lab today. Okay, so let's go back to AutoCAD one more time. Okay. Yeah, no worries, no problem. Okay, so right now in my screen, it's hard to tell whether that dynamic input is turned on or not. The easiest way to recognize it is if you activate a command. So if you go up to your top left corner, you can click on line, and in space, you can see that beside my cursor, I now have a gray box which reads specify the first point, and then it's giving me coordinates. So if I move around through my different quadrants, you can see that those coordinates will change. So in the positive quadrant, I will have a positive x and a positive y value. So x is 5.27 and y is 3.92. And that's the way it always is. We always have x and then y separated by a comma, right? So because I can see this, I know that my dynamic input is active. And this is bad because it's not going to work with our assignments, and it's not going to work with your tests, and it's not going to work with what we're learning today. So we're going to have to turn this off. Okay. So in order to turn this off, I'll go through this step by step, and then we're going to check to make sure that people are good. Okay. We're going to hit escape to cancel everything that we're doing. And in the lower right corner, you have 3 lines which represent the customization menu. If you click on those lines, a whole bunch of different options will open up on the right-hand side. So these options, the check marks are for what is displayed, right? So all the things that we see at the bottom here, all these different buttons, these are all check marks. But just because they're not displayed doesn't mean that they're not active, which can be confusing at times. So if I go up to the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items down, you have dynamic input. So we have to put a check mark here. And once you check that, you can see down at the very bottom of your screen that it is in fact already active. So what you want to do if you're going to follow along today is you're going to want to make sure that this dynamic input is active, right? Not active, sorry, that this dynamic input is displayed. So we're going to put a check mark beside it. And then back in the window here, we're going to make it gray. You're going to click on it. Blue is active, gray is not. And we can tell when it's inactive because now when we start our command, if we click on line, we don't get our gray text box and coordinates beside the cursor. This is what we want. Okay, so if you start the line command, if you still see the gray box showing up beside the cursor, then hit us in chat and we're going to make sure that you get set up properly here quickly. Just give you 1 or 2 minutes to do that. Okay, so is anyone having troubles turning that off? Are we all good?
Hi, Ainsley. Well, my class is first session, and I think I cannot hear you clearly. Maybe is it possible to have a louder or something?
I can't adjust it on my side. It's done by the program. Can you turn your volume up? Am I quiet for everybody or am I okay? We, yeah. Tony, am I okay? Yeah, I think I'm okay. Are you able to turn your volume up?
To be honest, I don't know how can turn volume on from Zoom. My laptop is really loud, but okay, I'm gonna
Oh,
find it. Yeah, I have to find something. Yeah.
okay. I don't know what to do. I'm gonna, you know what, if anything, listen carefully and I'll try to speak a little bit louder.
Yeah, I think
And
it's better.
and the YouTube is working now. We had a couple of days where we had to have BCIT added to our account, but it is working now. So um, if anything, you might just need to watch that quickly afterwards or tomorrow at your own time.
Sure, sure.
Okay. And if you have any questions, I can answer them aloud for you.
For sure. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, anytime. Sorry about
Don't worry, it's my problem.
that. Your
I,
problems are my problems. Okay,
oh,
so if you're all good, um, I am quiet. Volume is good. How bizarre. It might be internet connection too. Um, could be causing the volume to fade in and out at times. That does happen when you do conference calls over long distance. I have experienced that before, but we'll see how things go. If you have questions or you miss something, um, let us know in chat, and Tony will stop me if he needs to. Okay.
okay,
Make full use of Tony.
sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So hopefully now, when you start your line command, right, the dynamic input is turned off, and that means that we can kind of work. So in space, right, in the model space, we have to kind of imagine this grid of points. And if you have troubles imagining that grid of points, it's actually been set up already in this demonstration file. And if you go down to the bottom, there is a symbol that looks like a waffle, right? An extensive tic-tac-toe. And if you click on it, AutoCAD will show you this grid. So every grid line here that has been set up represents one unit. So on the X, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And on the Y, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Okay. So when we use those absolute coordinates, okay, you're going to input an X value and a Y value. They're going to look like this, okay, X and Y, and they will be separated by a comma. And because they're absolute, whatever you type in is where AutoCAD will go in space. Okay, so if you start your line command, we click on line, AutoCAD is going to ask you to specify the first point. So if I wanted my line to go up to point 17, 11, I would use my keyboard and type in 17 for my X value, comma 11. And now I can hit the Enter key and AutoCAD will go straight to that value. Okay. While I'm drawing, I can still use the pan and zoom features. So I can navigate around the space and line up what I want to see. So say for instance, if I wanted to go back to the very center of the Cartesian coordinate system, right? The center of the user coordinate system, the UCS, is 0, 0. So for the next point, I'm going to input 0, 0. And AutoCAD, when I hit enter, will go straight back to the center. So whatever data you have, whatever points you want to plot with that line tool, all you need to know are the X and Y coordinates separated by a comma. And you can work your way around space. So for very simple objects, a lot of the time you can kind of figure this out as you go around. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter, or you can hit escape to stop. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this line. And on your keyboard, you can hit the delete key right? Not backspace, it's the delete key. Or you can go up to your modify palette and you can click on the eraser, and this will remove that object. So if we make a mistake or there's something that we don't want, we can select it and we can erase it. If you erase something by accident and you want it back, up in the quick access here, you have undo, or on your keyboard, you can go Control Z. Okay. So to practice absolute coordinates, let's go down to the corner here of our positive quadrant, and let's start a line at 2, 2, and we're going to draw a square, which is 4 units in length on each side. So when you're drafting, you can go up to the top here and you can click on the line tool every time if you want to. It's not the most efficient, right? You do want to spend a little bit of time learning the commands and using the keyboard, because if we were to type in line, okay, down on our command line, you don't have to click on the command line. Even if I'm up in space here, as soon as I start typing, AutoCAD will jump here automatically. So I type in line and hit enter. The first point is going to be 2, 2, doing simple shapes. Okay. And what would be the next coordinate, which is 4 units to the right? Okay, these are absolute coordinates. So we have 0. So we have 1, 2 for x, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to be at 6, comma, 1, 2. So 6, comma 2 will be a line straight to the right, 4 units. 6, comma 2. Okay. What would be our next point going straight up? Okay, we're not moving left or right on the x anymore, so the 6 will still be for our x value, but our y is going to increase. Okay, because it's square, it's kind of easy math. The next point will be 6, comma 6 to go straight up. To go straight back to the left, okay, our x value will be 2 again, because we're 2 units over on the x-axis. We're still at 6 on the y. 2, comma 6, enter. And to go straight back down to the beginning, you have 2 options. You could type in the original coordinates, 2, comma 2, or in your command line, when you see options presented with a blue letter, you can activate those options with that letter. So close will finish the shape for us. So if I type in C and I hit enter, it will close the shape. Okay. If you typed in the original coordinates of 2, comma 2, AutoCAD would still be trying to draw. So at that point, you could just hit escape or you could hit enter. Okay. So using absolute coordinates, you can create a simple shape. You know, if you thought about this, you could probably draw a little bit more complex geometry, but you would not be able to put together floor plans or elevations or anything more complex, right? Using those absolute coordinates is going to take way too much planning, okay? So if we pan over to the next quadrant here, okay, we have our negative x and positive y quadrant. We're going to draw the same shape again, but this time we're going to use the relative coordinate input method. So with relative coordinates, all of the points are located relative to the last point or to the existing location. Okay, so instead of everything being located according to 0, 0 on the user coordinate system, The relative coordinates are instead going to locate everything relative to the last point. Okay. One important thing to remember with this input method is that the first point is always going to be absolute. I thought my dog was sneaking up on me in the dark, but it's actually my kid. I almost threw the ball at it. Not him, I should say. Sorry about that. I couldn't figure out what was crawling towards me in the hallway. It's like a little bit of a horror movie. Hang on one sec. I'll be right back. Hi, I'm back. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to look at our relative coordinates now. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to AutoCAD. And you know what? I know that for some people, this class is going to be boring, but practice is good. Easy practice is easy practice. It still makes you better at something. And to be honest, on a day-to-day basis, I don't use these methods. So it's never a bad thing to go back and review it a little bit. Okay, so even if you have done this before, or even if you know better methods or quicker methods to draw, please still practice with me because each one of these items, except for dynamic input, each one of these items, they will be on the midterm and the final exam. So you do need to know how to do them, and you don't want to be wasting time looking them up because you're unsure. Okay, so do practice with me, please. Okay, so let's start our line command again, right? We're not going to click on the button this time. We're not even going to type in the word line this time. Instead, we're going to use the alias. So an alias is like a code, okay? It's a quick code. You know, it's like James Bond and 007, okay? So we have the line command. We can type in the word line, or we can just use the letter L. So the letter L is the alias for the line command. So we go L and enter. And that, okay, will start the line command for us. And it asks us for the first point. So with relative coordinates, that first point still needs to be absolute. So we're going to draw the same shape. We're just going to mirror it across the y-axis. So my first point is going to be at -2, comma, +2. Okay, first point is absolute. -2, comma, +2. And there we go. Now we're going to use the relative input method. So it simplifies things a little bit. We let AutoCAD know that we're thinking of this position in a relative manner by using the @ symbol. So the same as your Twitter handle or your email extension, right? The @Gmail or @Hotmail, right? If you still have Hotmail. I still have mine. I just can't remember the password. Okay, so Shift and the number 2 will give us the @ symbol. And now I need to think about what my movement will be. Am I going to move on the x-axis? The answer is no. We're going to go straight up. So the x value will be 0. There's 0 movement on x. Okay, separate it with a comma. And now we think about what our y movement is. So from our current position, how many units up do we want to go? The answer is 4. So at 0, comma 4 will send us straight up. Okay, how do we go straight to the left? Okay, think about your x movement and think about your y movement. All right, when you're ready, we let AutoCAD know that it's relative, so we use the @ symbol. Okay, the x movement will be -4. Okay, we're drawing a square with 4 unit lengths. And the Y movement this time is going to be 0 because we're not going up or down. We're just going straight left or right. Okay, when we hit enter, we will go straight to the left 4 units. To go straight down, we use at 0 because our X now has no movement, and -4 because we're going in the negative direction on the Y axis. Right? Remember, as soon as we type in the at, AutoCAD now thinks that this existing location is our 0, 0 point. So the positive Y would be moving up, negative Y would be moving down, just like our Cartesian coordinate system. So at 0, comma, -4. And then to finish it, you could either use the command close, so C and enter, or you could use a relative movement at 4, comma, 0, or you could use an absolute method, which is just -2, comma 2. So you're getting more and more options now on how to finish this up, right? So I'm going to use an absolute method just to switch things up, and we'll go back to the beginning. Okay. If I did use that method, same as I explained before, AutoCAD will still think that you're drawing. So if you want to stop this, you could hit escape, or you could just hit enter. Okay. So we've looked at absolute coordinates, and we've looked at relative coordinates. Okay. The next one that we will review is going to be polar coordinates. So technically, these are relative polar coordinates. Okay, it's still a relative function, but it's done instead using an absolute distance and a specified angle. Just like with our other relative method, the first point always has to be absolute. Okay. So if we switch back to AutoCAD, sorry, I just have to cough. 1 second. Sorry, I was grinding aluminum at work today, and I breathed in some of the dust by accident. My mask had a tear in it. So I've been coughing all night. It's horrible. If anyone ever works with aluminum and you breathe in that smoke, it's really bad for you. But I'll survive. Don't worry, Tony. Okay, so the next one in our negative quadrant, negative X and negative Y values, we're going to use the relative polar method. Okay, so that first point, okay, we're going to take this shape, we're going to mirror it down and below the x-axis here this time. That first point will be absolute. So we can start the line command, L, and enter. The first point will be -2, comma, -2. Right, type just like this, -2, comma, -2. When we hit enter, AutoCAD will start as we anticipated. So relative polar doesn't rely on coordinates anymore. Okay, it's a little bit more functional. It's still not ideal for doing large plans, but it's a little bit more functional. Now, instead, we're going to be using distances and the angle that we're traveling. Okay, so we put our at symbol down so that AutoCAD recognizes that this is a relative function. Okay, so our 0, 0 point is now our current location. The distance that we want to travel, these squares are 4 units. Okay, I used to call them cubes, but then somebody pointed out that they're not actually 3D, so they're squares. Okay, so we're going to say we're going to travel at 4 units with an angle. So the angle symbol in AutoCAD is the less than symbol. So on your keyboard, that's the shift and comma key. Okay, So at 4 units with an angle of what? Which angle from the very center of our Cartesian goes straight to the left? The angle that we want is going to be 180. So at 4 units with an angle of 180. And when we hit enter, AutoCAD will travel the distance specified. To go straight down, let's back up a little bit so we can see all of our angles, 0, 90, 180, 270, right? 0 is right, 90 is up, 180 is left, and 270 is down. So at 4 units with an angle of 270 will take us straight down. Alternatively, another way to do that would be at 4 units with an angle of -90, right? 270 degrees is the same as negative rotation, -90 degrees. So whatever works best for you, you know, you can put that to use. They'll both go straight down, same point. Okay. At 4 units with an angle of 0 or 360 or 720 or, you know, whatever you choose, will take you straight to the right. And then you have many, many different ways of finishing that shape. Now you can use close or an absolute coordinate or a relative coordinate or a relative polar coordinate. Okay. So you can choose how you want to do that. And it's getting a little bit easier now with a little bit of practice. You know, relative polar input, you know, for a little bit more complex shape is going to be light years ahead of working with these other guys. Or maybe not light years, but it's going to be significantly easier to draw what you want to draw, but still not ideal for doing practical plans in an efficient manner. Okay. The last method that we will use in our class is going to be direct input. Okay, and direct input, it actually can take a little bit of time to get used to, but once you get the hang of it, it's quite quick. You can draw things quite quickly, and you will probably use it the majority of the time in this class to draw all sorts of floor plans and elevations and sections and whatever you need, you can do with it. That's why we like it. Okay, so the last one is direct input. What do my notes say here? Let's make sure we got this going here. Yeah, we're good. Okay, we'll switch back to AutoCAD. Okay, so this last one, we're going to use direct input. Okay, so L and enter to start our line. The first coordinate will be 2, comma, -2. We're going to draw the same shape again in our lower right quadrant, the positive X and negative Y quadrant. Okay, and before you start drawing, there's a couple of things to think about. So the thing with direct input is wherever you point your cursor, whatever direction you choose, you point your cursor, you type in how far you want to go. So I can type in 24. And when I hit enter, AutoCAD is going to follow that trajectory. There is a line that's 24 units long. So when you start to draw, you have to think about keeping your lines nice and straight. Because if you're slightly out, sometimes it's hard to tell. You can see right now that I'm locking in every 90 degrees. I'm getting a little green guideline. That green guideline is actually the polar tracking feature. But if I turn that off, right, I don't get those. So I can try to draw my box, right? We can go 4 and hit enter. And that's straight down. You can go out to the right here, 4 and enter. Type, go straight up. We type in 4 and hit enter. And we go straight to the right here. And we go 4 and enter. So if I drew this properly, the first point and the last point should meet up. But If you don't regulate the experience, right, if you don't put some constraints on those lines, you will get very messy line work and nothing will line up at the end of the day. So here's how you do it properly. The first point will be absolute, so 2 comma -2. When you draw the rest of these shapes, you have to either have the polar tracking turned on, okay, so the little pizza slice icon here. If you go to the right, there is a arrow, and when you click on it, you can set how often that tracking snaps. So you can do it every 90, or you can do it every 45, right? It's up to you what you want. Or the other option is the orthographic mode. So I prefer orthographic mode because I find it faster. When I use the polar tracking, I still have to find that green line, right? I still have to find that green line and be careful that I am snapped to it, that I am locked into it. With the orthographic mode, it only lets you draw 90-degree angles. So I can't go slightly off. It's absolute. Okay, orthographic mode is an absolute 90-degree angle. So using this angle, I can point down and type in the distance and hit enter, right? Point to the right, distance and hit enter, up, distance and enter, and left, distance and enter. And I know that this will be perfect. And when you get the hang of it, you can actually draft quite quickly using that direct method. Okay, so all of these are valuable. As part of the class, you will be tested on all of them, right? Absolute, relative, relative polar, and direct. Okay, but you will probably find that the majority of the time, the more and more you use it, the more you will become dependent on using the direct input method. Right? It is much quicker once you get the hang of it. It makes you a more efficient draftsperson, technologist. Okay, so hang on 1 second here. I'm going to check my notes. I want to make sure I covered everything that we need there. Then I'll be right back. I do intend in the next 5 minutes at 10 to 8, or when we finish this next little section, we are going to take a break, right? Give you a chance to stretch your legs and give me a chance to rest my voice. And then when we come back, we're going to look at the different assignments and give you some lab time after that to work on them. Okay, so a little bit longer class tonight, still not too bad. Okay, so give me 1 second to check my notes and I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. Okay. So what I want to do is on your handout, you have these assignments. Okay, we'll go down to that page, page number 2. Okay, so it's week number 2, lab assignment number 2. The objective of this assignment is to test your understanding of how to set up new drawings and create new objects. So obviously, I need to talk to you a little bit about how to set up a new drawing. So we're going to do that first. When you set these drawings up, you're going to be asked to set up the units, precision, limits, grid, and snap. Okay, you have to do that for each question. The grid and snap and limits, those are all features that we will only use for the first 2 or 3 weeks. After that, we won't use them anymore. And mostly we're only using them to kind of keep track of ourselves, to make sure that we have a visual space that we know we have to work within. Okay. So what we'll do, we won't take a break right away, but what we're going to do is I'd like to do number 1 with you. We're going to set up number 1, and we're going to talk through all of these different options, and I will draft it with you. Okay? And once we've done that, we will take a break and then have lab time afterwards. There is one question here. It's question number 4. There is a file here. It's called template.dwt. I have to put this on the D2L site for you. Okay, so I will find that file for you and upload it to the website for you. Otherwise, you won't be able to do number 4. But I'll do that as soon as we finish number 1 and we have lab time. Okay, while you guys are taking a break, I'll do this for you. Okay, so number 1, it asks us to start a new drawing, choose decimal for length, have a precision of 0.00, okay, and angle units with a precision of 0.00, limits. Okay, so let's start out with the basics. Okay, in AutoCAD, when you're ready to start a new drawing, you can go up to the top corner, and on the program menu, the big red A for awesome, you can go down to the new option, okay? Or in the quick access, you can click on the blank sheet, which says new. Either one of those would be fine. When you create a new document, AutoCAD is going to ask you to choose from a template. Okay, so this is like a recipe book. Each one of these template files is a different recipe, and those recipes create slightly different environments. Okay, the environment that we want to do our assignments in is the plain old AutoCAD. Okay. This is the same template file that AutoCAD uses when you start it up and you get your workspace. Okay. So this is what we will use the majority of the time. There is a file for question number 4 that I will share with you. Okay, and that will be your template file. So when you get that file, you can save it to your desktop, and then you would just navigate and find it. Okay, but for now, for question number 1, we can just use a CAD template file. Okay, so once you've selected it, you can hit open, and it will give you a blank model space. So in this model space, we need to set up our units. Okay, and the units, can change a lot about how your drawing functions. So on question number 1, for this particular question, we're going to be using decimal for our units, right? So in order to access that, okay, in the program menu, you can go down to drawing utilities, and then you have access to your units. When you click on this button, it will open up your drawing units dialog. Okay. If you don't like searching for that button every time, the command for units is units. So you can just type in units, and when you hit enter, you get to the same place. The alias is just UN. Okay, because it's not uncommon to go and check things once in a while. Maybe my friend Chris was drafting a little bit. Sometimes he's a little bit not quite reliable with the setup of his drawings. So one of the first things I check when I open up his documents is I open up the units and actually check to make sure that they are correct for that project. Okay. So the units that we use for our class will either be decimal or they will be architectural. Decimal is a metric system, and architectural is the imperial system. Okay, so we're going to go through number 1 and set it up for the decimal system, And then after we complete number one, I will quickly walk you through how the imperial system works. Okay, then you should be ready for lab. Okay, so our assignment asks us to set the units to decimal. So I got to flip back and forth. Okay, the precision is going to be 0.00 for the length precision and 0.00 for the angle precision. So length, type, and precision. So precision is the value that you record to. So when you ask for data, AutoCAD will provide you data up to 2 decimal places. Okay. Angle type is going to be decimal degrees, and the precision will also be 0.00. Okay. Insertion scale, you don't have to worry about it, so don't change anything there. The sample output is sometimes nice to see, and the lighting scale, you would only use this if you were taking the 3D class, okay, which we're not. Okay, so most of the time for our assignments, we will set up the length values and the angular values, all right, the angle values. Once we've done this, we can go back to the bottom left corner and we can hit OK. Okay, so the first step is done. The next step asks us to set up our limits. Okay, so we're going to set our limits to 0, 0, and 40, 40. So these 2 points represent a sandbox area. We're basically drawing a little bit of a border that AutoCAD is using for reference. Okay, so 0, 0, and 40, 40. And so if we drew this with the rectangle tool, right, our first point is going to be 0, 0, and our second point will be 40, 40. So this is the shape we're trying to create. Okay, but we're not going to do it with the rectangle tool. We're going to do it with the limits command. The way that we do that, limits, I don't believe exists. I don't think it even exists as a command anymore. It's kind of a legacy command. So it was available in older versions of AutoCAD, but not recently. So the way that we have to access limits is by typing it in. We just type in limits. Okay. Once we hit enter, it will ask us for our lower left corner. So we can enter 0, 0 for the lower left corner of our sandbox. And then the upper right corner will be 40, 40. And you have to hit enter each time to input those values. Okay. And that's that. The trouble with limits, you know, viewing them in the default manner is that you can't really see them, right? That's the hardest part about this. But we're going to fix that, okay? And we're going to fix it at the same time that we set up our grid. Okay, so let's look at our grid instructions. Okay. So the grid instructions are to set our snap and grid to 1 unit. Easy peasy. I like it. I like it a lot. Okay. So the easiest way to access our grid and snap is if we go down to the bottom here. We have our grid where you can turn your grid on and off. Okay, we probably want it on. And on the right-hand side, there is an arrow. If you click on that arrow, you can go to your snap settings. So if we click on snap settings, we will have a new dialog open. And this is where we can adjust the snap and grid spacing. So the snap spacing should be 1. Okay, because this box is ticked, everything will be square. So if we update one, the other will update as well. Okay, same with our grid. If we update 0.5 to say 1, the other will update as well. Okay, so setting up your snap and your grid spacing is not bad. They should be 1 each. The thing to do next, okay, and you're going to have to remember this for your next questions, because it doesn't actually tell you this, which is just the way it is. With a little bit of time and practice, you'll get it. Okay, so we set up our snap spacing, we set up our grid spacing. If you want to see the limits, you have to uncheck a box at the bottom here. So right now, we are displaying the grid beyond the limit. So we're displaying the grid everywhere. If we uncheck that box, we will only display the grid inside the limits. So we set up our snap spacing, we set up our grid spacing, we uncheck our box that says display grid beyond limits, and when we hit OK, you all of a sudden will be able to see our limits. Okay, this is what we were trying to create. Now in our model space, we have a reference for the general area that we should be in. Now, when you do assignment 1, there is a chance that you will go outside, right? That's okay. This is just reference. It's okay to go outside, and I know you will, okay? So don't panic. Everything will be okay, okay? Now, what is one of the last things that we should do with our document before we start drafting? You can type it in the chat now. What do you think we should do with this document before we start drafting? Yeah, perfect. We should save it, right? Because it's digital, right? You always want to make sure that you save your documents, okay? Saving your document keeps it safe if the program crashes. It also gives you the ability to keep track of your progress, right? And to save when you make changes, okay? The way that AutoCAD works, every time you save your document, it automatically starts to create these backup files. So if you're working on your term project or you're working on an assignment, and the computer crashes, if you have been saving it, there's a good chance you will be able to recover that file. And next week or the week after, we'll start to show you how to do that. Okay. All right, so we're going to save it. So the way that we save our document, okay, we have our quick access menu. You can click on the save icon, the little diskette, which no one knows what that is anymore, because there's actually a whole bunch of people who have never seen a disk, which is kind of scary, kind of not, I guess. It's kind of like how no one knows who MacGyver is or He-Man anymore, or the A-Team, right? Okay. The other option you can do is if you go to the program menu, you have save options here as well. Okay. So we click on save, and I'm not going to put it there. I'm going to make a folder here for all of our class stuff. I'm going to call it BLDC 2400. We'll call this Wednesday. Okay, so I made a folder where I'm going to keep all of my documents so that they're safe. They're not going to be lost on my desktop. Keep my desktop nice and tidy. Okay. And the name of this document is not whatever we want to call it. If you look at the assignment, the name for this document is my last name dash A2 dash 1. Okay. So I will call this one Inslee dash A2 dash 1. So each question will have its own file. Okay. And this is my last name, not what you should be writing. You need to put your last name. Last semester, I got a whole bunch of Inslee dash A2 dash 1s. Okay. It's like multiplicity. Okay. Below the file name, you have the file type. So if you look at it, this is actually kind of interesting, right? You have all these different file types. So all of these are different AutoCAD versions. So if you're working with somebody that has an older version of AutoCAD, you can back save it to that version, right? So every 3-4 years, they come out with a different file um, hierarchy, right? So if we have to, we could save it back. The latest one that we're using is 2018. So very likely next year or the year after, they will release AutoCAD 2022 or AutoCAD 2023, who knows, right? There'll be a new version here. For now, we're just saving as AutoCAD 2018 drawings. Okay, so we should be able to use our files all the way back to 2018 software and not lose any functionality. If you start going back to 2013 or 2010, then you can start losing functionality because some of these older versions don't have the same features as the most recent one. Okay, so you can let people know that when you share files with them. Okay, so I've named it properly. I have the proper version type. Now I hit save. When I hit save, you will see that this name will change from drawing1.dwg. This is our generic name, right? It will change to match what I typed in here. And it actually shows my root as well to that folder. Sometimes it doesn't do that. I don't know why. Okay. So now that I've set this up with the proper units, the proper precision, the proper grid and snap settings, and the proper limits, and I've saved it, now I can start drafting. Okay. So using the line tool, hang on one second. I'm going to open up these instructions on my other computer. Oh, that's week one. Week one. Week number 2. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the instructions for this. Start a new drawing, choose decimal for length. All that's done. Awesome. Now we're going to draw a line sequence. So the first set of instructions all rely on absolute coordinates. All the shapes are not rectangle. Some of them are, but not all of them. Okay, so I start my line, and the line starts at 0, 0. You literally just have to copy the instructions on the page. Next point is 0, 10, 10, 20, 20, 10, 20, 0, and then back to 0, 0 again. So you can use that close function if you wanted to. Okay, there's our first shape. It's not a square. Has a little bit of a pitch to it. Okay. The next set of instructions uses relative rectangular, and the absolute point that we start from is 20, 10. So I start my line tool, L, and enter. The first point is 20, 10. So I'm going to start here. Okay. Now we do at 20, 0, at 0, 20, at negative 30, don't miss the negatives, 0, at 0, negative 10, and the last one is at 20, 0. And we stop. And so now we have our first two sets. Start our line command again. The absolute point is going to be 30, 20. So it starts at the same place where we stopped. And this time we're using relative polar. Okay. Has a little note there about no dynamic input, but I'm going to ignore that. No dynamic input. Okay. So in brackets, you have the written input. So if you look at it, we're going to do at 14.142 with an angle of 45. Next one is at 20 with an angle of 270. And then the last one is at 14.142 with an angle of 135. That's the opposite one. Awesome. Almost done. Almost done. Okay, and the last one is direct. So when you start to do the direct, make sure that you turn on your orthographic mode. That's the right angle symbol. Make sure you turn on your orthographic mode. So we draw nice straight lines. So the line is going to start at 0, 10. And we're going to go to the left. So we point to the left. If you're zoomed in really close, zoom out. Give yourself lots of space. We're going to zoom out. We're going to go 40 units to the left, 40 units up, point to the right, and we go 50 units. And then we point down and go 20. And you will go outside of the grid. That's okay. Okay, so there's our first question. Nice, simple roof plan or something like that. Okay, once we've finished, we make sure that we go and we save it. If you're unsure, click it a few times. Nothing wrong with being extra cautious. Okay, and once we've finished that, we can move on to the next question. So question number 2. Okay, let's set this up again. So question number 2, we're going to go up to our big red A for awesome, and we're going to click on new. If you haven't finished question number 1, I'm still going to move forward. You can finish that in lab. I just want to show you the imperial system. I know it's break time. Let me do this last little bit, and then we can have break in lab. Okay, because some people want to go. They're telling me. Okay, one moment, and then we'll take break. Okay, so when you set up your document for number 2, it's going to ask you to set up your units. Okay, and we're going to use an architectural length. So architectural lengths are feet and inches. Okay, the precision is 1/8. We're still using decimal degrees. The precision is 2 decimal places. Okay, so we're all done. You don't have to do insertion or lighting scales. When you type your distances for architectural purposes, it can be a little bit different. Okay, so when we set our length type to architectural, AutoCAD is assuming that 1 unit equals 1 inch. Okay, so by default, AutoCAD is always thinking in inches. So if I start my line command, and I draw a line out, if I type in 36, then I will get a line that is 36 inches in length, or 3 feet. Okay. When you want to input feet for AutoCAD, okay, we'll draw the same line again. Okay, you have to use the apostrophe key to indicate feet. So we would go 3 feet. Okay, so if you know the foot value, you can input the foot value. If you want to use the inches, you can use the inches. It's up to you. So go 3 feet and enter. Okay, so 36 units is the same as 36 inches, which is equivalent to 3 feet. Okay, When you get into fractions and foot and inch combinations, right, we can go 3 foot 6 inches. You do not have to indicate the inches. You can just write 3 foot 6. The only value you have to make clear for AutoCAD is the feet. Okay, so there's 3 foot 6. And same as before, if you want to, you could write 42. That's the equivalent in inches. Okay. Things can get tricky though when you do feet, inches, and fractions. So what if we're doing 3 foot 6 and 1/4 inches? Okay. So with 3 foot 6. Now, if you hit the space bar, it's the same as hitting the enter key. So AutoCAD, you know, we need to do something a little bit different. So when we have a fraction value, we separate it from the inch with a dash. So 3 foot 6 dash 1/4, or 0.25. You could use a decimal value if you wanted to as well. Okay, so 3 foot 6 and 1/4. Okay, so on assignment number, or sorry, question number 2, question number 3, be very, very careful to input the feet and inches properly. Otherwise, you can get halfway through it and then you can royally goof it up. Okay. On question number 2, if it doesn't work out, select the lines that you've drawn and delete them. Start over again. It will be easier. It doesn't take it very long to do, so even if you have to try it 2 or 3 times, it's not that bad. And if you want to delete things, you can select them in your model space by clicking on them, and you can hit the erase key right up here in the top right corner. Okay, so we're going to take a break because people need a break. I need a break too. You can work on question number 1, question number 2, 3, 4. If you have problems, please ask us so that we can help you and clarify. If you don't want to do your lab right now, then that's fine. The YouTube videos, they are working now. So I'm going to stop recording at this point, and then when it's done processing, I will upload it to the site tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on how long it takes. Okay. Each question is their own document, and I'm not going to tell you when they're due. If you want to see when assignments are due, you have to check your course outline. They're all there, okay? But they're not due today. I'll tell you that. Okay, so if you go back and you look at your course outline, there is a schedule there that tells you when your assignment is due. Okay, you have to get in the habit of checking that. Okay, because it tells you when your midterms are, when your term project is due, when your final exam is. You have to go and check your course outline. I shared that with you last week. Okay, so I'll be back in 10 minutes, so 8:26. And then if you have questions, you can ask me. If you don't want to stay, have a really good week. Thank you for coming today. And I'll talk to you later. Email me if you have a problem. Okay? Okay. Back in 10.